A Machesney Park man is working to get his murder conviction overturned for killing his wife and dumping her body in the Rock River more than a decade ago. Todd Smith was sentenced to nearly 60 years in prison back in 2017. His latest motion, filed last year, calls for more time to prepare in representing himself for post-conviction relief. Smith has argued for a new trial, claiming the court made a mistake in allowing his case to happen in Winnebago County, where publicity allegedly created a biased jury. Smith had joined several citywide searches for his wife, giving interviews to the media when she was reported missing. No action has been taken since his filing last year. Our digital content producer, Jim Haggerty, has been looking into this. Is there a chance Todd Smith could actually win a new trial? And if so, how could he accomplish that?
Well, it's going to be very difficult for him. I mean, he filed some appeals after his conviction that was actually upheld by the Illinois Appellate Court. So in order to prove to a higher court or to that court, depending on what he has in a post-conviction motion, if he files one, he's going to have to prove that he didn't get a fair trial or produce some sort of evidence that he didn't commit the crime. But it's going to be very difficult for him.
So could Smith now petition to the federal courts?
Well, not at this point. He's not at that point yet. In order to go to the federal courts, he's going to have to make his way through the state courts, for lack of better explanation. And in order to do that, he's going to have to follow federal court procedure, jurisdiction guidelines, and things like that. But he's not at that point yet. And again, if he is going to be successful in getting what's called a writ of habeas corpus, he's going to have an argument that shows that he was discriminated against at trial, the lower courts made an unreasonable ruling, or prove that he didn't do it.
So can he just continue to file motions for a new trial at this point?
Well, the short answer to that is yes, okay. Actually, but he cannot keep making the same argument over and over and over again. If he makes an argument here, let's say he's claiming the prosecutor may have engaged in some sort of misconduct, he can't continue to argue that if a court rules that that wasn't the case. If they rule against him, he has to come up with something else, another argument, some additional evidence if he wants to continue with another petition. But he can continue to file things, but he has to do it according to the law.
So at this point, you mentioned earlier that you sat through his trial in 2017. What was that like after all those years?
A trial with a lot of evidence. There was a trial that was 5 years in the making, a lot of witnesses on the state's part. And it was very emotional for people who knew and loved Katrina Smith. And quite frankly, there was a lot of people who told me over the years that Todd Smith, who was convicted of this brutal crime, was not the man that they knew all of their lives. So it was a confusing case on both sides of it.
It was something that really impacted the community. I mean,
absolutely.
And I interviewed him at one point too during one of the searches. It was interesting that he seemed very just like he was willing to find her as well as everybody else was.
He did.
Nobody suspected him, I don't think, at that point in the early stages. Interesting. All right, Jim, thanks so much for that update.
Thanks.